But I will say this. Or Roberts and North Texas, we both talked about that.
Yeah.
We talked about how those matchups made sense to be upsets. And we talked about how we didn't love the other Oral Roberts or not Oral Roberts. We didn't love Winthrop or Colgate to be upsets. So let's spend a little bit of time on those games before we move on and talk about today's slate. So which one? I think Oral Roberts is one of my favorite upsets in a while. And
what had to be? I mean, it had to be. But again, we kind of saw it because of Kyle Young, right? Like Ohio State with Kyle Young, we were like, all right, they've overachieved all year. We've talked about this, kind of ad nauseum all season. Like Chris Holtmann got as much as he could. That roster is probably, a top 5-ish Big Ten team ultimately. But he maximized them. And then you take Kyle Young out, kind of like, to me, I'm not going to say the same as being without Isaiah Livers for Michigan, but like similarly, they need all their pieces at Ohio State, and we saw that. The crazy part to me, and you probably watched more of the game than I did because I was at another game. The crazy thing to me was that they couldn't, that they allowed Max Asmus and Kevin O'Banner to get as many open looks from three as they did.
Well, I mean, that's the problem with Ohio State's defense is that they don't really play defense. And they can't really guard ball screens, and that's what Oral Roberts does. Yeah. And so that's why, I mean, we kind of knew it. Like that was the perfect matchup, which is why, ironically enough, like the reason that we were on the over was because we just assumed that neither team was going to be able to stop each other. Now, neither of us predicted that they would play that game at like a 65 possession pace, which is what they did. And that's why that total went to overtime. It didn't even come close to the number, which kind of sucked, but whatever. I think I had 4 losses yesterday on my bet. So the thing I loved about it, Jeff, is that Max Asmus and Kevin O'Banner were guys that like we've kind of known about all season, right? Like we saw Asmus go for 33 against, I think it was Oklahoma State in Stillwater, and we saw him put 20 on Arkansas, and we saw him put 28 on Wichita State in Wichita, and we saw the performances that he had. Like he had one stretch in February where over the course of 4 games he averaged 37 points. He went for 40 twice in the stretch of 4 games. He had a 7-game stretch where he hit at least 4 threes in every single game during that stretch. He ended up being the nation's leading scorer. Kevin O'Banner was not like as much of a mid-major darling, but he had 27 on Arkansas earlier this year. Then in the Summit League tournament, he had that tip in at the buzzer, and he had 2 monster dunks on North Dakota State in their win in the title game. And it was like, okay, these are the mid-major guys that we love, and these are the guys that we're going to be talking about. And I love when those guys that we kind of hype up and we say like these are the guys we've been watching all season long. And if you're not a college basketball fan, keep an eye on them. And then they turn into like the mid-major darlings of the tournament. It's just I love it when it plays out like that because these are guys that part of the reason why we love college basketball is these mid-major guys that that don't get enough attention, that are just killing everybody at the lower levels. And it's great to see them shine when they get their opportunity. Those 2 combined for 59 points yesterday. My sources, Jeffrey, tell me that's pretty good.
That is pretty good. That is pretty good. And yeah, I mean, listen, now it'll be interesting to see. I mean, the big thing is always like, all right, now when they win, like how far can they go?
They can beat Florida. They can beat them.
Of course they can. Of course they can. It's not a horrible matchup at all for them. In fact, I don't know if the spread. I'm sure it's out already. I don't know what it is at this point. I can probably find it.
6.5 at Bet Rivers. I checked it last.
Yeah, I'm surprised. Like that's high. That's kind of high. In a way.
I would probably be on Florida at that number.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I mean,
the difference is that I think that Oral Roberts actually had the 2 best players on the floor last night, and I don't think that's going to be the case when they go up against Trey Mann in Florida. And I also don't know how Oral Roberts will deal with Colin Castleton. Actually, as weird as it sounds, I think Ohio State is a much better team than Florida, but I think Florida is much more built to be able to deal with somebody like Oral Roberts than Arkansas is. All right, so we also had North Texas knock off Purdue in overtime again, and we had Syracuse blow out San Diego State thanks to 30 points from Buddy Boeheim. So Oregon State blew out Tennessee. Like, do you have any overarching takeaways from day one? Anything else that you think we need to touch on from day one? Roy Williams, for the first time in his career, has lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament.
That was
Bob
crazy.
Huggins won game number 900. Like, we had a lot of stuff happen yesterday. It was wild.
That's a crazy stat for Roy Williams. That's insane to me. Like, at this point, for your first time in 30 tries, losing in the first round. I don't know. That's just amazing to me with all the coaches you see get upset early, right? I mean, like, all great coaches get knocked out early. Yeah, I mean, Purdue, I was expecting more. To me, Jaden Ivey was great. Trevion Williams was good. They just didn't get enough from their other dudes. What else?
Purdue just feels like they're a year away. And the other thing about it is, like, that was a tough matchup for them because North Texas kind of does the same things well that they do in terms of control tempo and run offense. The big difference was that North Texas had a guy that could take a game over by himself in Javion Hamlet, who, by the way, like, did you see his dad?
No, I didn't.
His dad? So Hamlet's dad came out in like a bright green T-shirt that had a picture of Javion airbrushed on it with like all his like career accomplishments written on the T-shirt around him, and he's walking around with like the iPad, filming on his iPad as he's watching the game, celebrating afterwards. It was just like one of like the top 5 all-time dad moments in NCAA tournament history. It was, oh man, Javion Hamlet.
Another big dad moment, Rob, was Jim Boeheim watching his son go for 30 to beat San Diego State, and they killed him like from start to finish. And I kind of called this one. Like, again, it's not that hard to call. I just didn't feel like the Mountain West was that good. Not the ACC was either, but we always see Syracuse kind of come on when it matters, right? I mean, we've seen this lately. Going to the Final Four a few years ago, and I don't know. I love Buddy Boeheim. I love it. I love the dynamic. I wrote about it when Buddy, I don't know if you remember when he was in AAU ball years ago, and sat down with Buddy for a while there and Jim. And it just when Buddy admits that my best friend is my father, who was 71 years old at the time, and Buddy's like 17, and they sit and they watch TV together and they hang out together. I don't know. I love Buddy Boeheim, so to see that was very cool.
Goodman had a long day yesterday, guys. Stop killing him. He's getting a little old. He's not ready for this time. He said, call you the mailman because you're mailing in this pod. I'm
not mailing in the pod. I'm tired, man. I'm running around. I'm getting, no sleep. But the good thing is actually not having to travel, man. Like, that's the big thing. Not having to travel has probably saved me here. But, listen, to me, I would say Syracuse for sure. And then, obviously, we have to talk about your Tennessee Vols, Robert.
That was bad. Like, it was we knew the writing was on the wall for the season. That roster was not, it didn't fit. They don't have, I mean, we've made this point over and over again. They don't have a great lead guard, and they don't have a great leader. There was no one on that team that could pull everybody together and say, fuck this, stop playing like a bunch of bitches. Like, you got to go out there and be better. You have to go out there and play hard. You have to care. They didn't have anyone that could step up and yell at people if they weren't doing things the right way, that would hold the players accountable. Like, coaches can only do so much. You got to have players that can hold players accountable. And the reason why I think that's so obvious is, like, when things were going well for Tennessee, they were rolling, but they didn't have anyone that could help them.
It was a short window. It was a short window.
No. Even if you go out and you watch the games where they played well, like the first 30 minutes against Alabama, they were awesome. Then Alabama responds, scores like 8 straight points, and you could just see the heads hang. And Tennessee, they kind of expected that something was going to happen. So they didn't have that leadership on the roster, and it was just very, very evident once you got past like the first 10 or 12 games of the season. All right, a couple other things that I just wanted to note before we move on. One is that where was I going with this?
I don't know.
The Florida Virginia Tech game was awesome, right?
Was that the best game of the day by far? No, Oral Roberts was the best game, wasn't it?
Oral Roberts was the best game of the day, but the Virginia Tech game, it gave us a true buzzer beater. We had controversy at the end. We had a couple of huge dunks. We had Colin Castleton do his little shimmy. I don't know if you guys saw that. So that was fun. Rutgers, I could not possibly be happier for the kids on that Rutgers program. Like they really took it hard when the tournament got canceled last year, because the veterans on that team committed to Steve Peichel so that they could build Rutgers up and get a shot at the tournament. And they did it. And then they didn't get the shot at the tournament, which sucks.
I'm happy. I'm happy for Peichel, man. Peichel is like just the consummate professional. Never, I get enough coaches that will self-promote. Pikes never does that. He just coaches his team. He just grinds it out. And very cool that Rutgers won a game. I think what else? I mean, the 1 seed's pretty much rolled. I'm trying to think if there was anything else interesting.
I want to show this real quick. Joe just mentioned, did you ride the first half underwave? Yes, I did. I caught the end of it. I think I went I got 3 in a row, and then
what was overall out of the 16? What was it?
It was the first 10 games yesterday. The first half all went under, and I think it was someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was the first 13 out of the first 14 in the tournament, because I think it was 3-1 in on the first.
You know
4.
what? I should have known this, because honestly, when I got to Banker's Life, it's the first thing I thought about. I got there and I'm watching Arkansas Colgate. There's nobody there. Like, it's so cavernous. It's so big. There probably were a decent, I don't know what the number was, because not every percentage is 25. A lot of them are like, Purdue was 9. I think some were like 15%. So honestly, it's one of those things where I think it's tough for these kids, playing in the big arenas. Maybe not Hinkle as much, but some of the other ones, Banker's Life, Lucas Oil,